Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Timothy here with Mana Rocks, not Jank Diver Gaming. Welcome back to the channel. I don't make videos for this channel too often anymore, but we've got something a little interesting we wanted to talk about today. I am joined here by a personal friend of mine, Trevor. How's it going, Trevor?
It's going all right. Glad to be here to talk about this.
Right, we're talking about not core set, Commander 2021. We've got full deck lists. They come out in paper in about a week, and they're tied to the Strixhaven set. So the five schools, each Commander deck is one of the different schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, that I think their approach to this was to try and differentiate the new schools from like the Ravnica counterparts, right? So like
Yeah, I
Warhold is red white, and red white has this like overbearing commander problem of being the guild that has to attack in order to win. And they were like, okay, how do we re-envision red white to not be about attacking? So they went with artifacts and spirits or some nonsense. Like
yeah,
this,
they've definitely deviated from what they typically do in past, which I'm happy for, that they're exploring new areas in this section of the color pie for red white, especially for Commander, which red white is known to have its own set of issues in Commander, and I feel like they've done a little bit to maybe try and address some of those. So,
yeah, and
but yeah, but
I don't know how these are going to pan out in the long run. Like I was saying right before we started recording, like I'm referring to Warhold as Boros, right? And that might just be like magic tendency. People are just going to
oh
call
yeah, I
these
don't
by their
expect
Ravnica names.
I don't expect these college names to really catch on. Maybe in if you're drafting or something, people will refer to like Lorehold as an archetype. But in the grand scheme of things, people are gonna call this deck the Boros Commander deck,
Yeah.
because it's just established language for Magic players at this point.
Yeah, I think they
Um,
tried to do that with Dragons of Tarkir, right? It was like Blue Black was the Silumgar clan or something like that, and people just called it Dimir. But
oh
um,
yeah,
same deal. Like at least they're trying to do something different with the color pairs, and we'll see a little bit of that today.
yeah, that is definitely something I appreciate about this set, because I mean, this hasn't been the most exciting product release as far as Commander's concerned, as some of the others in the past few years. But I don't know. There's some interesting things. I have thoughts. So
Yeah, there's some cool stuff going on, which we'll get into in here in a second. Trevor, you'll have to bear with me. I've got to plug the channels and stuff like that. But
oh, I understand.
for the
Plug away.
for the viewership, for all 20 of the people who still watch Mana
Of
Rocks
course, of
videos,
course.
yeah, you can subscribe below for more content like this. Again, I don't use the Mana Rocks channel very often anymore. If you want to find out what I'm doing recently and more often, look up Jank Diver Gaming. I'll have some links in the description below, but we're more focused on our cube community right now than the stuff I typically do on Mana Rocks. But this seemed like a good place to do this. Trevor and I are gonna go through all of the new cards specifically in the Commander products today and just kind of give our thoughts on them. I don't think we're going to be grading things or anything. We're just kind of, you know, shooting the shit about the new cards and seeing what's up
Yeah,
and giving our
as far
opinions.
as I'm concerned, all the new cards get a perfect glowing score of 5 out of 7.
Yeah, they're they're
The
like
perfect 5 out of 7 for all
like
of them.
good C
That's
pluses. Like
that.
you passed, but your
Yeah,
teachers won't
yeah, C
remember you.
plus. I give this one a C plus. Yeah.
Good job. One thumb up. Ebert,
Yes.
Roger Ebert. One thumb up.
Yes. Our perfect Roger Ebert grading
Um,
scale. Yes, perfect.
So let's go ahead and just kick things off here. We're going to start with Warhold, and I think the form we're going to use here is we're going to look at the actual face commander of the deck and give our thoughts on that, and then we'll move into the alternative commanders for those decks. There are four like main commanders for each deck. There's the face card, there's an alternative card in the same color pair, and then there are two new legendaries that are monocolored. So we'll see two
Yeah.
Boros commanders or Lorehold commanders, and then we'll see a mono red and a mono white, and then we'll talk about the other new cards from the set. So
Yeah. I guess technically there's only two commanders per
that's
se,
true,
because
yeah,
these
because
partners are monocolor. You can't play them with the deck out of the box as the commanders.
I
But you could build decks around them, and
yeah
they don't have partner or anything. It's not like
I do think
yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh.
our approach in general, which we didn't really talk about, is that we're gonna talk about these cards in the scheme of like actual commander games, not out of the box. So like, do these cards fit into
Yeah,
decks that
like
people
we
are
haven't
already
played
playing?
these, and we could speculate which would be best out of the box, and maybe we could say what, like at the end, maybe which deck we think if you play them all out of the box together, which we've done that in the past,
Yeah, they're
which deck might be the dominant deck.
they're usually pretty
But like
fun
it would be
out of
very
the box. So.
speculative, but we
Exactly.
haven't played with these, and
I mean, we're gonna do that
um,
once, and then we're gonna disassemble them and use the pieces. So you know.
yeah, that tends to be what happens.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'll go ahead and kick Warhold. I guess I'll go ahead and go through Warhold, and maybe we can alternate who takes each deck or something like that. But I am looking at the face of the Warhold commander deck. It is Oskir the Reconstructor. It is 4 mana, 2 red white for a 4/4 with Vigilance. And it has 2 abilities. You can pay 1 mana and sacrifice an artifact to give target creature you control +2/+0 until end of turn. +2/+0 kind of doesn't really matter, but I assume that's just an easy way to get artifacts into your graveyard.
Yeah,
And then for X mana, you can tap it and exile an artifact with mana value X from your graveyard. So you can pay like 5 mana and exile a 5-drop artifact from your graveyard, and you create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled cards, but only at sorcery speed. So right off the bat, this is saying, hey, we're moving away from the combat oriented Boros and we're going more value oriented and artifact specific. So, how do you feel about that? Just like in general, having a Boros deck that's an artifact, like cares about artifacts?
I mean, I think it's great that they're exploring this area for these colors. Because I mean, there's just so many just aggro, uh, go wide with weenies or equipment or Voltron. There's so many different Boros decks already and Boros commanders already that they just incentivize you for attacking your opponents, which isn't always the best. Is more difficult strategy I think in Commander lately. Uh, because it's hard to connect sometimes. And this is more like you could do more of a control thing with this. Like you said, the +2/+0, like I'm sure it'll be useful at times, but the primary ability here is the cheap way to sacrifice an artifact in instant speed.
Right.
And the second ability I think is the real like is again like you were saying value. This is the value you're getting.
Yeah, that's supposed to
This
be
might
like, you know, there's like this whole push for white to kind of catch up to the other colors, and I think this is like an
yeah
attempt to say, hey, you can get virtual card advantage here off of this second ability on a white card, and it's like, oh, crazy.
yeah I definitely like expect primarily like that's how the second ability is going to pan out. My immediate thought was Ugin's Nexus. With Ugin's Nexus,
Sure.
you can take 2 extra turns here. So that
Well,
was
does that actually work? Because
you would have to. One of them would go immediately because it's legendary,
yeah,
and then the other one you would sack to the
oh
first
yeah,
one,
you'd have to sack the other one because Ugin's
and then you would
Nexus.
take 2 extra turns consecutively.
Yeah, you copying Ugin's Nexus doesn't normally work because it actually stops extra turns
It
from
stops the
happening.
extra turns.
So
Yes,
you'd
you
have
have
to
to get
get
rid
rid
of
of
the
them
second
all.
one immediately as well. So,
Yeah, I guess
but
you
you
could
know that's
go
something you could do.
infinite turns is right off the
Well,
bat.
you can't go infinite because it exiles out of the graveyard. It would just be two. It
Oh,
would just
you're
be two
true.
turns.
You're true,
Which
true.
that's 5 mana, 2 extra turns. That's pretty good.
I mean, that's what
Or
my like. This is so sim. We'll talk about this in a minute. This is so similar to the Duretti deck, and when I had my Duretti deck, like that's just kind of how I
it
ended
is.
games was with Ugin's Nexus and Gonti's Etherheart and stuff like that.
I mean, this
Um,
was how I was describing it to other people. This precon is it's the Duretti precon, except they took out the value cards and put in a Sun Titan.
yeah,
So
they
that's
replaced
basically what we're looking at
Wormcoil
here.
with Sun Titan, and here you go.
Yeah, no Worm
Um,
Coil. There's a Sun Titan for you.
for the purposes of like longevity, I think this card is cool. Like, I don't foresee people playing this card a year from now as the face of their commander. Like, do
Um,
you think this is going to catch on? Like Boros artifacts. Do you think that has like a foothold here? And we'll see some other cards, and maybe those kind of hold it together. But on its own, do you see this card and it like screams like, "Hey, I want to build a Boros artifacts deck."
not particularly. I think mostly because I mean we've had what almost 10 years of Commander products now, right? Has it been almost 10 years?
2011 was the first
2011.
commander, and 2013 was like when it started becoming mainline. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're
I
talking
mean,
like
I feel
8
like we've had
years, 9
we've had
years.
a lot of Commander support, and not to mention all of the sets that have just come out, the normal standard sets and supplemental sets that come with legends of their own. There's just so many commanders like for the artifact archetype, which I think it's one of the more popular archetypes, like on EDA Truck or whatever, if you're into that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Artifacts are really popular, and there's a lot of strong artifact commanders. I feel like this isn't necessarily a very competitive draw. This card is like a face as a commander for your commander deck. It is like someone who's interested in exploring this Boros artifact archetype, who's maybe challenging themselves to build a deck around these colors for in something for artifacts that isn't equipment based, because there's lots of equipment Boros decks.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really hard to like have a foothold with a commander that has to like survive a turn and then use a tap ability that requires a bunch of mana. Like it's just it's a little bit too slow, and if you ever like set it up, people are gonna see that it's there and just kill it before it gets to your next turn. So
yeah, if you're doing anything too crazy, I mean, you can like let it go around a turn and then throw a possibility or something, your juicy artifact into the graveyard for your
yeah,
Ugin's Nexus or whatever, like which
I
I
mean
guess
you
that's the most kind of the most broken thing you can do with it. I guess that's the only thing I think of.
you
But
get to do that exactly once before the table catches on and like doesn't let this card survive ever again. So
yeah, and also you have to. I mean, you're essentially casting a card. You're getting an extra copy of whatever artifact you're casting. You're paying the mana cost. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's not like you're not really cheating out artifacts with this, which I feel like was a lot of artifact decks are trying to do, is they're trying to cheat things for cheap, like with Arkham Dagsson
right.
or Duretti. I mean, Duretti's in this deck. Like Duretti is definitely one of those. Like everything you could do with this deck, I feel like Duretti just maybe does more efficiently, more consistently.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing white, but I don't think you're losing much with white necessarily. I mean, they printed some cool cards with this deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
don't see this to wrap up. I guess this card, like I don't see it. Well, like you said, a year from now, I agree with you. Like outside of people like us who like building gimmicky commanders and challenging our deck building chops in silly ways. Like outside of those type of people, I don't see people this being very popular.
yeah, agreed. So ultimately, like, not super excited about the actual card itself, but excited about the direction that they're
Yeah, but
moving with the
C
colors.
plus 5 out of 7.
Yeah.
Great job.
So I'm gonna hop over to Mythic Spoiler now and look at the alternative commanders. I'm gonna go ahead and start with Alibu, Ancient Witness. It's 3 red white, so 5 mana for a 4/5. It's a legendary artifact golem. Other artifact creatures you control have haste, so it itself does not have haste, but your other artifact creatures have haste. And it says whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attack, Alibu deals X damage to any target, and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. So your artifact creatures can come out swinging, and then you get a scry and deal a bunch of damage when it attacks, assuming you have a bunch of tapped artifacts. But the interesting thing here is that it doesn't count the number of tapped creatures that you're attacking with. It's just the
Yeah.
number of tapped artifacts you control. So if you can
So your
like,
mana rocks do work too.
yeah, your mana rocks, or if you
Okay.
have like a way to like just tap down like a bunch of treasure tokens and stuff like that, this can
Yeah.
scry
Or
really
if you
deep.
have um Mycosynth Lattice and your tapped lands. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Uh,
If you have
we could do
Mycosynth in
some
your
silly things in that
artifact
regard.
deck, look at the crazy things I can do with Mycosynth Lattice.
Yeah,
Uh,
we broke it. We
we
figured it
finally
out.
broke it. Everybody, get your copy now before it goes
Everyone
up.
subscribe to Mana Rocks. We're on the cutting edge here of
Um,
breaking these cards. But
so initial reaction, I'm not as high on this one. Like the fact that it itself is kind of like this clunky 4/5 for 5 that presumably doesn't get you immediate value unless you already like unless you play this and another artifact creature on the same turn or something like that.
yeah,
I guess it does, right? Because you can play this and then you can attack with a bunch of like
yeah.
Thopters or
Well,
something.
the haste is good. Like without the haste, I would definitely be more tepid about it. But like the haste, I feel like is a big deal as far as like making sure you get this effect the turn you play it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't give itself haste, so that is a little
No,
interesting.
but it does trigger off other artifact creatures attacking.
Yeah.
So this
Oh yeah,
itself does
yeah.
not have to
So
attack.
yeah, your Pilgrim's Eye or whatever that you played a couple turns earlier can get in for
Yeah.
some extra value.
I mean that's pretty
Uh,
like if you go solemn into this and you play this and then solemn attacks like scry 1 deal 1 on your solemn is okay, and that's like the floor. It's usually going to be way more than that because you can just tap a bunch of artifacts before
yeah,
the creature hits or whatever. So I guess this can like actually deal a ton of damage. It's not card advantage. You're scrying. You're not
no,
drawing, but I don't know. Are people playing this as their commander over the face? Are they playing this instead of the giant?
I'd have to remember like what this deck looks like out of the box. Probably not because it's so. I mean, it's very. This is more specific to building your deck around artifact creatures than artifacts in general. Like the face commander, uh, can make use of your just general non-creature artifacts more than this one can. I guess. I mean, unless you can tap them down, of course. But
Yeah, I'm looking through
sometimes it's harder
the.
than. I mean, I think in a vacuum, the face commander is going to be more universally relevant,
Mhm.
uh, probably to the deck out of the box than this one. As far as like a build around, this one's probably more interesting. Maybe I just like parameters that I have to build around and figure out, and the parameters of specifically artifact creatures is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it looks
Um,
like from the just looking at the deck, it's got your standard like steel hellkite and stuff. But it looks like the best thing you can probably do is play like Mer Battle Sphere, attack with
yeah,
that, tap the mirror down, and then have this deal like additional damage on top of what the Mer Battle Sphere is doing.
yeah.
I'm sure there are way more busted things you can do.
Oh, I'm sure. Like if you go to gather type and artifact creatures, you can
Yeah,
find
give
all
give,
sorts of.
give this infect. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, you could give it infect.
does red and
Break an
white
infect. Break an
is
infect.
is there even a
You're
way in red
correct.
and white to give creatures infect? I don't know. All
Uh,
right, so
I mean,
Alibu
yeah.
alternative. We're gonna move on into this. Oh, we got an elephant.
We did get an elephant. There's elephants.
Losheel.
Satan's giving us elephants.
Losheel is one of those names where, like, a year from now, someone's gonna be like, "Oh, I have a Losheel commander deck," and I'm gonna have to be like, "Which one's that?" They're gonna be like, "Oh, the elephant with
Oh
the
yeah, I'm gonna have
artifact."
to gather. You have to.
Um,
I'm gonna be one of those. I'm not gonna archive
yeah.
away, but
Lashiel Clockwork Scholar, 2 and a white for a 2/4, so 3 mana 2/4. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. And then, whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card, but this ability only triggers once each turn. So you can draw up to one card per turn whenever an artifact creature comes into play, which is actually pretty good. Like, that actually is just straight up card advantage, as opposed to, like, card selection and a bunch of scrying and stuff, and that's pretty easy to achieve, right? Like, I mean, anything
yeah,
that generates a Thopter or a Servo every turn, it's very easy to just do that. Boom, draw a card.
yeah. I would. I mean, I've seen some Tishar decks before that were very much artifact centric. And that they've done. I've seen them do pretty well. I've seen mono white artifacts be able to kind of pull its weight, and this is definitely a card that I like. Like a mono white artifact deck would probably want because you're playing Solemns, you're playing your burnished cards, you're playing those kind of cards in a mono white artifact deck, Mirror Retrievers, and this like as far as like picking a face card for a mono white artifact deck, even this definitely pulls its weight. I think like especially if you can finesse a way to get a trigger on each of your opponent's turns as well, which imagine is what you would try to be doing if you're going to build this deck from the ground up. Like
There's
if there are
probably
ways to get artifacts
really
on.
easy ways to just like trigger this every
Uh,
single turn.
I mean,
I'm
artifact creature tokens even like I'm
yeah,
sure there's ways like to do that. The first ability, the prevent all combat damage, like
sure. Like
sure, yeah, that's like honestly, if you took that line of text away, I probably wouldn't feel much different about this card. I would think like, okay, cool, white card advantage.
yeah,
Uh,
I'd rather it be there than not, but at the same time, like, it's not drawing power for me. Like,
yeah,
it's awkward because it's like it's hey, Boros still wants to attack, wink, but do it
yeah.
with
Well, you
artifact
you still
creatures.
want to attack. Obviously, you got to win. This is how you're gonna win, guys. Like, yeah. Both of these past two legends were very much like attack with your Boros creature. It's like
Yeah,
so funny at the top we were saying like, oh, new archetype for Boros, but you're still attacking.
yeah. This
Don't get it
does
twisted.
does feel like the type of card that you want in the 99 of like your Tashar deck or your white like artifact
I
base
would
deck or
definitely, I would
something.
definitely
Maybe even
say
Sharoom.
so.
Like, I don't know if people still play Sharoom
Sharu,
or not,
yeah, yeah,
but
like an artifact creature deck with white. You could definitely make this and make a cut for this in one of those decks probably.
yeah. Let's
Uh,
go ahead and look at the mono red legend, which is a little offbeat, but still, I guess they went all out on trying to make sure that these cards signal that there's some sort of card advantage in these colors. But
yeah, and
um,
this is continuing, I think, a trend like with Commander products the past few years, where there will be a theme for the deck, but one of the legends will have like will kind of be separate from the archetype that the deck wants to do, like to kind of add that kind of diversity. Like, yo, here's another card that also does something different. Like I
Yeah,
think specifically like Rayami in the Morph deck, which had nothing to do with what that deck wanted to
it's
do, but
actively
was
bad
kind of
for
its own.
your deck to have in
Yeah,
the morph
it's kind
deck.
of its own card, and they've done that the past few years. They've had
Yeah,
uh,
this one's probably the definitely the one that sticks out the most because it doesn't actually say the word artifact or anything. But
yeah, it doesn't really have anything to do with artifacts.
w- would you pronounce this
But
Layla?
but
Lelia, the blade reforged. Anyway, Leela, uh,
Leela, yeah,
two in a red for a
Strong Leela.
2/2 legendary spirit warrior. It has haste, and when it attacks you, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. That's already pretty decent. And then it says whenever you exile one or more cards from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Layla. So this is like one of Warhold's themes in the main set is that it exiles cards from the graveyard. It's supposed to, I guess,
Yeah,
signify archaeology and stuff like that, which makes sense.
yeah,
It's cool. So there's a lot of things that trigger off of exiling cards from your own graveyard. Obviously, this one triggers off of its own attack trigger. So it'll attack, it'll get a +1/+1 counter, and then you have until the end of the turn to play the card that was exiled. And it does say play, not cast, so you can actually play lands.
yeah. It's the typical red card advantage that
Yeah, the
you
impulse
can expect
drawing.
from a red card. The impulse draw. Yeah.
Yeah, temporary
Um,
card draw has a restriction on how long you have until you can play it. This card seems actually really good to me.
I like this card. Yeah, it reminds me. It does go with sort of like the because the lore hold in the Strixhaven set isn't, I wouldn't say artifact themed. It's very much like you said, spirits and archaeology. It's like a graveyard kind of archetype.
Yeah, it kind of is.
And this is more in lines with those. So like I know there's Lorehold legends in the set, and I imagine like this would be a card you would play with those that are more like there's the one that makes spirit tokens and all that. And there's multiple spirit lords, like legendary spirit lords. So
Mm-hmm.
those would once you play this. Oh, and then what is there's I can't think of his name from Commander Legends. It's like Bella
Uh,
Lugosi, Bella something, the spirit, the Boris spirit guy who cares about
oh,
exile.
Belborka.
Oh,
Yeah,
Buca de Beppo,
yeah,
whatever.
Buka de
Uh,
Borka.
yeah, that again, too many names to remember now. But
Very
yeah,
similar actually to this card.
very yeah. You would play that. I mean, you would play this card in that deck easily.
Yeah, so this card has something cool going on with it. Obviously, the first ability triggers the second ability, but you could probably
Yeah,
just build around the second ability because it triggers. Obviously, if you like exile a bunch of cards all with one effect, it's only going to get a single +1/+1 counter. But if you can like individually exile cards from the top of your library or from your graveyard, then this card can actually just get kind of huge really quickly.
yeah, and
Um,
I think there's probably enough. There's probably enough mono red. I mean, red cards at this point that like those impulse draws, those light up the stage kind of cards. Like, there's enough
mhm.
at this point. I think you could fill out a deck with that, and get this thing pretty big and get the value on the way.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, you have like Outpost Siege, Vance's Blast, and Cannons. There's another one of those that's pretty recent that I'm blanking on, but like you can just set up a bunch of those and those trigger individually and make this card big while also giving you your card advantage. So I like this. You do have to be
yeah.
kind of like in a position to be attacking pretty regularly to have
Yeah,
this
this is
card
this
be
is an
good,
aggressive
good.
card. I mean, it's mono red being aggressive. It's not too shocking, but
I I could
it's an
see,
aggressive card. It's an aggressive form of card advantage too. The impulse draw. It's use it or lose it kind of card advantage.
yeah, I
It
could see
definitely
people
like
playing this as their commander. Like it might
yeah,
not
like
be amazing,
especially
but I could see it.
I think this is the kind of deck you would have for like a pot of three, like because again, very aggressive, kind of Voltron-y, um, relatively cheap cost, 3 mana is like it's a sweet spot for a mana cost. It comes down pretty early and gets value pretty early.
All right.
Um,
So that's all the legends. I think we can probably keep conversation succinct about a lot of these other cards, but we kind of
yeah,
want to go through all of the new cards specifically. And if you're on Mythic Spoiler, I'm here with Excavation Technique.
yeah,
So this has a new mechanic. There's one demonstrate card in each deck, and the way demonstrate works is when you cast the spell, you can choose to copy it. If you do choose to copy it, you choose another player who also copies that spell. So you will have the original card and a copy for yourself, and then another player will have a copy of the card. So there will be three copies of this card, or rather three uh, the effect will be tripled. So you definitely want to play politics right, and you can also choose not to copy the effect. So you can just cast
Yeah.
this. For example, this card, Excavation Technique. It's 3 and a white for a sorcery, and the effect is you destroy a non-land permanent. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. So 4 mana sorcery, destroy anything that's not a land, and refund that controller 2 treasure. Not great, not very efficient. It deals with anything, but not, you could just play Swords to Plowshares if you want to kill creatures. The
I mean, if you're
upside
looking
here,
for efficiency with minimal upside, yeah, Swords to Plowshares, cards, effects in those veins, in that vein. But this I would say is much more like a politics kind of card,
definitely.
which I like a lot. I like this card for like a politics kind of deck because I mean, if you're if you're at a table like in a pot of four and you're at a point in the game where you're working with another player essentially to take down a more problematic player. I mean, this is like a 4 mana
Yeah, this
kind of a
is
three,
this is 4 mana,
three permanents,
pop
like
3 things. Of course,
yeah,
they're gonna
and
get 6 treasure, which matters. But
yeah,
if you're taking
I like the
three,
treasure clause as well, like because I mean, in the spirit of group hug decks, particularly, I like that. That it's more of a justification to put in those kind of decks, but also you can make sure that what you target with this is negligible, especially if. Like in the context of this deck, if you give an opponent a copy of this and they target one of your things, you're getting 2 treasures, which your Boris artifact deck is might care about a little more than say another deck at the table that you gave the 2 treasures to. But
mhm. I like all
I
the
think this card is
demonstrate
okay.
cards. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know that you're always playing this, but it is a good politics
oh,
card.
it's definitely not a staple of any kind for
No,
this isn't you just slamming any white deck by any means. It's definitely a very gimmicky, very politicky. Um,
I think we'll see that for all the demonstrate cards. Really, I don't remember all
yeah,
of them off
demonstrate
the
definitely
top of my
is.
head, but
I will say, demonstrate like uh, it pairs well with the Magecraft mechanic in the Strixhaven set.
because it
Uh,
copies, yeah.
yes, which I think is kind of intentional. Maybe not. I don't know. But you can. There's I guess some cool things you can do with that. Maybe not in this Boris deck, but like in one of the decks later down the line.
I mean, it's also
Potential
just like
synergy.
it's kind of a flavorful mechanic, right? Like,
It is
hey, I'm
flavorful, and
showing you what
yeah,
to do. You do it now. Like,
the
it makes
teaching
sense.
they're really playing up the school
Get
nondescript
it? We're
school
at
of
school.
wizardry, totally original school wizard school theme that they got going on. So yeah, it does play into that. I mean,
All
yeah,
right.
all in all, like it's a cute card.
Yeah, I think we're gonna
Nothing
have
too.
the same sentiments about most of the demonstrate cards.
I think we will.
Let's move on to Cursed Mirror, which is actually just a really cool design. One of the more unique cards from this
Yeah,
year. It's 2 and a red for an artifact that taps for red mana. So it's just a 3 mana rock on its own, and then when it enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it gains haste until end of turn. So it's a mana rock that for the first turn it enters the battlefield is a copy of the best creature on board.
yeah.
This seems like just kind of incredible to me.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, the potential ceiling on this is very, very high.
yeah, they have
As far
Kozilek
as
on
like,
board, and your
yeah,
mana rock becomes a
getting a turn,
Kozilek.
getting their Ulamog. The floor is even not that is like it. I mean, I can very scarcely believe that you're not gonna get some amount of value from this effect in Commander because the power of creatures tends to be so good in Commander. I mean,
Yeah,
you're either getting immediate value. People are playing creatures that give you immediate value, and they don't care if they live or die, or they're playing like you said, Kozilek. So
yeah.
either
This
getting like the copy of a Solemn when it comes down as a mana rock.
well,
I mean,
well,
this is a 3 mana
this.
mana rock, so like you're already playing 3 mana
Oh,
for
it's. I
power
was a.
mana, so it's already
Yeah, I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say. This is as it enters. I misread that. I thought it was when it enters. So I was about to say this doesn't actually copy ETB effects, but that is not
Oh,
true.
but it does.
Yeah, this is actually like a clone, and
Yeah,
you will get ETB effects as
I
well
can
as attack
very
triggers.
yeah you can absolutely double up on your own Solemn trigger if someone else has an interest as an Eternal Witness or something. Like I just feel like the ceiling is very high for this card.
Yeah, you
Uh,
you can envision like this card's just going to be good with anything that has an attack trigger on board, but also like it's like what's the phantasmal image? You're basically paying a small amount of mana to copy an ETB effect on board.
oh yeah, Phantasmal. I'm not sure. I don't think it's as popular anymore, but like Phantasmal is very popular for a while,
Yeah.
and is it's a like clones are good. Clones are good in Commander for the exact same reason that this card is good. But yeah, like the floor on this card is it's a manolith,
Right.
which perfectly playable. But then also just the potential. You're very often going to get a lot of extra value from this card.
Yeah, it's
Or
also just super like it's just a cool card. Like
It is a cool card. It's a
not
cool
not
design.
not a bunch of these cards are just like stand out like, oh, this is awesome. This one definitely is. The
Yeah,
next
I
one
mean,
is not.
yeah.
This card's weak and I hate it. Monologue Attacks, 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. So obviously a callback to Smother and Tithe, which I don't think really needs a
Very on the
callback.
nose.
What Smother and Tithe came out like 2 years ago? Do we really need another card reference in that already?
Yeah, it's very deliberate, very on the nose reference to that card.
Yeah, this card's not good, right?
I don't think it is. Uh,
You know,
um,
what's that card from the core set, Mangara? Right, it draws you a card
Mangara,
whenever
yeah.
someone casts their second spell.
I
I
haven't played this
see.
Mangara one, but I mean,
Well, because people, you're not playing against like autonomous robots. They see that you have an effect that gives them value for casting 2 spells, and if they don't have to cast 2 spells, they'll just stop doing it, and then your card sits there and doesn't do what it says it does.
yeah, it's very easy to play around. Um,
I mean,
and then on the turns,
just play Smother and
go
Tithe.
ahead.
Like, if you have a Smother and Tithe, just play it.
Yeah, I imagine if someone's gonna play this, they're also playing Smothering Tithe in their deck. They're doing maybe a kind of treasure thing, or they're really leaning into the potential treasure tokens. Um, this card, yeah, it's very easy to play around. On the turns where you are going to get a treasure token, your opponent has made that analysis and deemed that your single treasure token isn't as good as whatever spells they're going to be casting that turn, and it's
Right.
probably not going to be like they're willing to pay that cost.
I
Um,
mean, if uh if this said like every spell beyond the first one, like you make a treasure
yeah,
for every spell, then it would be better. But then your opponents are casting like 4 or 5 spells a turn. That's probably not good for you.
yeah. There's been cards in the past in past Commander products that had this exact same problem where there's a threshold like the second spell each turn. Like someone's gonna see that and they're gonna be like, okay, this is the turn I'm gonna cast like 5 spells because like they're only gonna get the single treasure token this one time.
Hmm.
From however many spells I cast after that. Where with Smothering Tithe, like every card they draw is gonna trigger Smothering Tithe,
Yeah.
and it's always gonna uh, pose a benefit to one of their opponents if they draw those excess cards. With this, yeah, like it's just the one trigger, the one treasure token, easy to play around. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's just not that good. I'm not going to see.
Mother and Tide,
I
this
can't
is
imagine seeing
not.
that much appearing very much in games.
Seems like a
Yeah,
good
it's not smothering time.
budget alternative, but let's move on. I think the cards kind of
Yeah, it's
sucks.
forgettable. Forgettable.
Battle Mage's Bracers, 2 and a red for an equipment. The equipped creature has haste, and the equip cost is 2, so pretty clunky to get going. 3 mana, and then
Yeah.
2 to equip. You're paying 5. You're getting haste, and then it says whenever an ability of equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay a mana. If you do, copy that ability and choose new targets if you want. So talk to me about this card. Obviously, this is a callback to Illusionist Bracers, but the numbers are tweaked a little bit. And I think the big thing
Yeah.
here is that it gives haste. So if you're copying a tap ability, you get to copy that ability.
I mean, it's illusionist bracers,
Yeah,
but
it's the same thing.
you're paying more for that effect essentially, and you're restricted by color as well. It's a red card.
Yeah. Do you put a lot of stock in the fact that you pick up haste here for tap abilities?
I don't, especially in red. I don't know. I don't.
And you have to pay a mana when you do copy it too.
You
So
have to pay a mana to do a copy, which sometimes you're trying to copy. I mean, you're trying to get multiple activations. I mean, most people are playing illusionist bracers. They're trying to get a lot of extra value.
yeah,
I mean, if you're copying one big expensive ability, maybe. I don't know.
illusionist.
I don't love this card, especially because like just play illusionist bracers. That's kind of my feeling about this card in particular. And
Yeah,
if you want haste, play any number of boots. Like you like play your boots, play your greaves. Um, there's just I don't think the haste is worth it for the extra like hoops to jump through with this card specifically. Unless I guess if you are playing some kind of deck with red in it, where the activated ability of your commander or the amount of cards in your deck are just that good, where you doubling up on it is that good. Then maybe I guess you play this in those decks specifically. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
the face commander is kind of the joke here. I think the
Oh, you're right.
the
I meant
giant.
compared to the base commander, I guess you can get you copy a second ability is the idea with this.
Yep. Agreed. If you have a copy like Illusionist Bracers is probably consistently better because you don't have to pay mana when the ability actually procs. And I don't even know that I see Illusionist Bracers anymore like that
I
often.
don't see
So
the illusionist bracers that often, even with activated abilities. Just yeah, this is just a clunkier version of that. And then also, I should say, Rings of Brighthearth too is another.
yeah.
Like if you're going to be playing mana copy abilities, like why equip? Why like
Also,
Illusionist Bracer has much more, or Rings of Brighthearth has much more range to it, and was just reprinted, so it's
yeah.
reasonably priced now.
At the recording of this video, it's like $5 or something like that. So
Yeah, it's not a
go buy it. Another hot take. That's two. We got two hot takes here at Mana Rocks today.
yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah,
even
Rings of
remember what the
Brighthearth.
first one is, but
People are sleeping on this card.
buy everything.
Yeah, buy everything. It's all low
Um,
prices.
moving right along, I actually think this card's good. I'm curious what you think about it. Archaeomancer's map is 2 and a white for an artifact. It says when it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic planes, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Oh, they don't say shuffle your library anymore. They just say shuffle. Cool.
Brevity. They're all about that
Whenever
lately.
whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player has more lands than you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. So first off, let me just say that like I'm not a huge fan of the idea that white has to play catch up as its form of like play style because that means it never gets to be in first place. It's always catching
Wizards
up to someone
disagrees with
else.
you, but okay.
So that just out of the way, this does a pretty good job of catching up, right? If someone's going wild at the table, this gives you the 2 lands to kind of put into play immediately, and then for the rest of the game, anytime anyone's ahead on mana, you get to just kind of free roll. It's kind of like
Yeah, it
burgeoning.
sticks
It
around.
is
Yeah,
burgeoning,
it's a
right?
burgeoning. Yeah, it's kind of it's white burgeoning. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, this is
White archetype burgeoning.
actually the same exact thing as burgeoning, but you get to get 2 additional planes right off the front. And I'm not a
People
fan of
love
burgeoning.
burgeoning.
Yeah, I
I
actually.
know.
Oh, it's right here in the thesaurus. I missed it. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, really good with the
they
land
should be printing these
tax
cards.
and gift of estates and things like that. But I hate burgeoning because unless you're constantly drawing like new hands, you just run out of lands and then your card stops doing things. But
Yeah, if you're playing like burgeoning, if you're playing like Damia or something where card advantage is not really a consideration for your deck because you always have cards in hand, like with Damia or something. Then yeah, play burgeoning because your cards are meaningless. Like the number of cards in hand is meaningless because you're going to draw a new hand. But most decks don't function that way. So yeah, burgeoning, you dump your all the lands out of your hands, and then you're sitting there empty-handed while everyone else is
yeah,
setting up more
I don't
valuable plays.
I don't think this card is a staple, but it does seem good in a deck that can like get the advantage off of it. Maybe even blink it if you can blink this and just keep getting planes. That's good. But
Blanket in white, I don't know about that.
can it do that? But also if you can use the artifact to like sacrifice for a different effect or something like
Yeah,
that, this seems
like
pretty
with
good.
the this card and the previous card too. Like these make sense in the context of this deck
Yeah,
and these commanders. Yeah, this is a theme again. Like something we see every year in the commander products is they give us one or two. They give us two this year. They gave us two last year with the Cartographer's Hawk and the Verge Rangers, where it's
they're
like white
always
playing
one.
playing catch up with the lands. Like they're
Yep.
very into
Commander Legends had the Accord, Knight of the Accord or whatever it's
United the
called.
Accord. Yeah.
So I mean that's just what white does, and they've said that that's how they plan on keeping it. Is white is playing catch up, which to me means that white is never gonna like if you're always playing catch up, you're never in first place, right? You can only tie. So I don't like
Yeah.
that's part of the identity, but this card's not bad. So
Well, I think they're trying to like if you wanna get ahead on mana, they want you to be making treasure tokens apparently. But the Monologue Attacks, as we said, is not it.
right.
It's
Um,
not the way to go. But
up
yeah, as far as
next.
this effect is concerned, Archaeo is a good card. You're right. It's a good card.
Yeah. So up next we have Ruin Grinder. Really creative name. 5 and a red
Mm-hmm.
for a 7/4 menace. Just like random stats and abilities. No one cares because you're not playing this for the stats. Uh,
Yeah.
when it dies, each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. And then it has Mountain Cyclone for some reason. I guess that's just to be able to like use it from the graveyard as an artifact for like the commander and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is the most random like menace, Mountain Cyclone, and then
It is just it's very much a collection of words. It's a collection
um,
of words and abilities.
it's worth noting that the
And
wheel
numbers.
effect applies to each player, not just yourself, and it is a May ability, so everybody
Yeah.
gets to
When I first
choose
read this
whether they
card, I
will or
liked
not.
it a lot because I like cards like Runehorn Hellkite.
Yeah, just
I like
make people draw
Master
over and
Wheel.
over.
Yeah, I like instant speed Wheel of Fortune in Commander because like that's one of like one of Red's few tools to like of control really to disrupt your opponents. And being able to to wheel the table at instant speed is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
This cannot do that because it's a May. So like if your opponent has a good hand, that they can choose not to wheel. Whereas like Runehorn Hellkite or Magus of the Wheel, like you're forcing them to discard potentially their hand of 20 cards that they cultivated over the course of the game for random 7 cards. Yeah, this the fact that it's a May, I'm not like yeah, it can wheel you. Um,
I mean, it's
and I guess you can abuse it because it is an artifact creature and you're playing like like a deck that can abuse artifacts.
yeah, it's an artifact creature that gets itself in the graveyard for a small bit of advantage. It's there. We're gonna see, I think, another cycler here too, and
Yeah.
it feels like they wanted to nod towards the Gavi cycling deck from last year and just give it like maybe a few more things. But
Oh
I don't
yeah, I
know.
didn't think about that. But yeah, like I guess Gavi
Like
might care about this.
yeah, if you are playing a deck like this one or Duretti and you care about specifically reanimating artifacts, this is probably pretty good. But if you're just like an artifact deck that doesn't care about the reanimation thing, then you probably don't care. So, and it's also
Also,
like 7/4 menace is just like whatever. Like sure,
I'm not I'm barely paying attention to that. I mean, I think about like combustible gear hold,
uh huh,
which like if you're playing this for like cards, just play combustible gear hold.
yeah, that
And
thing,
because this is giving your opponent's upside because that you are giving them a choice to
right?
either to either discard their hand of two lands and draw a fresh 7, or to not do that if they have a great hand. So
It,
you are giving your opponents
it
something with this card.
indiscriminately
Which
wheeling your opponents in commander is usually a bad thing because there's so many ways to use the cards from your graveyard as an advantage that like you don't
true.
want to just wheel for the sake of wheeling unless you are coming out on top. So I don't know, this is another wheel for, I guess this doesn't even work with Nekuzar because they don't have to wheel. So
The May is what kills it for me.
yeah,
Like either have it just wheel you so that you can get your fresh hand,
I think I was
or force the
all
wheel on the opponents.
I, I think I was off
The
this
May kills
card
it.
when I read the name and it was Ruin Grinder. So
Yeah, well, as we know, Strixhaven and I guess this commander product release, like the names, I have to just look past them. I have
all
to
right.
blot them out.
So on to Bronze Guardian, 4 and a white for a star 5. It's a golem artifact creature. It has double strike, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So base 1/5 double strike. Um, the big thing here is your art. It has ward 2, and your other artifacts have ward 2, which means your opponent has to pay. Actually, your opponent can target it with whatever, but that spell or ability gets countered unless they pay 2. This isn't like a restriction on targeting it. They can still target your stuff. They just have to
Yeah.
pay 2 or else it gets countered. Ward is kind of, in my opinion, a complete throwaway ability for Commander, which we'll see again in the Quandrix deck. But I'm ignoring Ward on this card, and I'm kind of ignoring the whole card because,
I
like,
mean, it's kind of a French vanilla creature, right?
yeah, I mean, it
So,
can hit pretty hard if you have a ton of
yeah, I mean,
artifacts.
double
This can
strike
be like
is
a 10/5 double
double strike is
strike.
a imposing keyword, but
Like Ward 2, your opponent's not gonna like get stuck by that. They're not gonna be like, oh, I have to pay 2 additional mana. I can't kill your giant double striker.
yeah,
They're just gonna pay the 2 additional and kill your guy.
this is very win more because if it has any kind of if the power is enough to be threatening to your opponents, you already have a lot of artifacts on board, which
Yeah,
means you're probably already in a good position.
if this is a 15/5 double striker, like how are you not winning with
How
whatever
yeah,
15 artifacts
what
you
are
have
these
on board?
14 other artifacts you have that aren't winning you the game that you needed this? Like,
This is probably gonna end the game out of the box.
but yeah, I mean, out of the box, like yeah, the giant double striker, like
Yeah,
the precons, that's how games will end. Is some
right.
giant creature.
Basically, no
With
nobody's playing this card in Commander
yeah,
like a year from now.
outside of some out of the box setting, like I don't see people clamoring for this card at this point in Commander.
Same. Let's move on to Audacious Reshapers, I guess. I don't remember this one. 2 and a red for a 3/3 human artificer. Tap, sack an artifact, reveal cards from the top until you reveal an artifact. Put it onto the battlefield. Put it onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom in any order. It deals damage to you equal to the. Oh, so this is Madcap Experiment. So
Yeah,
you
or I was
sack.
thinking of, I guess Madcap
Oh,
Experiment
it's
is
right
what it
below
is.
too.
I was reminded of Goblin Charbelcher, just because it's a flip and then deals damage. But I'd completely forgotten
Well,
that Madcap
it deals
Experiment
damage to
cards. You're right.
you. You're the one who takes
Oh
the
yeah, it deals damage
damage.
to you. Madcap does damage to.
Madcap
Madcap
deals
does.
damage to you. That's the
Yep.
combo is with blight steel, not blight steel, platinum
Platinum
Imperion.
Empyrean, which you could do the same thing with this, right?
Yeah, but then like, what are you doing? What's the artifact you're sacking? If Platinum Imperion's the only artifact in your deck, like, is
A
that
treasure
Platinum
from the
Imper?
Monologue Attacks.
Sure, Platinum Imperion's not even that good in Commander, but
No.
like another creature that has like this reminds me of Goblin Welder, right?
Yeah,
Where
not
it's
as good as
like
Goblin Welder,
I'm
but
setting up an artifact and I'm gonna try to turn a little artifact into a bigger artifact, but I'm gonna have to wait a
yeah.
turn to do it. This one's a little more random, so I don't think people are gonna like feel like they have to go out of their way to kill it. But I don't know, unless you're playing the
Yeah.
type of deck that has only like bonkers artifacts and you're trying to like make treasure tokens to turn into it. Like I don't know.
Or if you have like if you're playing a deck that can consistently predict what the top of your deck is with like a Sensei's Divining Top or something.
Yeah, setting up the
Um,
artifact seems kind of important. Otherwise, you might end up taking like 10 damage when you activate
yeah,
this.
I don't know. It seems like a lot of work for like again, Goblin Welder. I think is a better card.
Yeah.
Cheating things out of the graveyard is I think more consistent, more reliable than polymorphing your artifacts and potentially taking a bunch of damage.
This seems
Um,
like the type of card you would want if you're playing specifically like Boros artifacts and not like red blue artifacts, because blue just has the ways to tutor the artifacts you want.
oh
You don't have
yeah,
to jump through hoops.
definitely. Like a lot of these cards, like if you're like blue is just so far and away has so much control over. Yeah, like you don't have to play an effect like this. You can just play Word of Invention or
Yeah,
something.
War of
Whatever.
Invention or Fabricate, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
it's
get
like
the
I don't need
artifact I want.
to be gambling with my life total
I'm not
and
gonna take
on my
15 damage to go get like my next artifact in line or
yeah. I
whatever.
don't know. It's just not as good as like you said, Goblin Welder's already, but
Yep,
maybe
cool enough, I
maybe
guess.
there's cute combos with it. I don't know. With the Dwarf Invention and
I'm.
Imperium.
You can tell I haven't like studied the spoilers because I'm getting into like these cards that I just don't even recognize. Next up is Dig Site Engineer. It's 2 and a white for a 3/3. Another 3 mana 3/3. It's a dwarf
Yep.
artificer. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, create a 0/0 that has power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts. So it makes the Karn token. It makes the Urza
Yeah, it makes
token.
the Urza token,
Um,
which you are familiar with. How
yeah,
it's
I
a good
mean,
token.
it is a good token in a deck that has a ton of artifacts because you can just pump them out and they
Yeah, and it's
actually do
very
become pretty big. This seems decent if you're casting like Cheerios, like just 1 and 2 drops. This is the type of deck that you're actually like putting Ornithopter in, and
yeah.
your
I
Tashar
mean,
deck that just has a bunch
like
of cheap things.
the secondary commander, the Alibu or whatever,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
artifact creatures matter. Like a deck like that where you want a bunch of artifact creatures and being able to make these artifact creature tokens. Like it's the token generator.
it's
Um,
good with Mycosynthelatus.
yeah. Oh well,
Mycosynthelatus
correct.
triggers the ability. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this
uh,
this actually seems like a decent card that I wouldn't be embarrassed if like my friend put it in their artifact deck. Like
yeah.
it,
If you're playing the elephant even like you're playing mono white artifact creatures matter.
yeah.
Sure, play it. Play
It's
it.
a it's a little awkward that it itself is just like this random dwarf creature, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Even like Dapala and
I
Magda,
was just thinking Depala because whenever I see dwarf, I'm like, how does
yeah.
this change the Depala equation?
Dapala
Is
plays,
the Depala deck off the ground? Have we reached
yeah.
that precipice?
Someone at
I don't
Wizards
think
has
I
a
don't know if
Dapala
Depala
deck.
wants this necessarily, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
It seems fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling my
I
mom
don't hate
about
it.
it, but
Five out of
it's
seven.
fine. Uh, Angel of the Ruins, just
Okay.
random artifact angel, sure.
Yeah.
5 white, 7 mana, never casting it. Moving on. 5/7 flying. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
7 mana, 5/7 flying. Like doesn't matter. Who cares?
5 out of 7.
When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 artifacts and/or enchantments, and it has Plain Cyclone for 2, which I think saves the card. The fact that this has Plain Cyclone is
Oh,
like
absolutely. This is
you would not play this card if this didn't Plain Cycle.
unlike the Mountain Cycler. I like this card much better.
Yeah,
This is playable. This is very playable.
this is good. It's up to, so if you only need to snipe one thing, you can. The only thing
Yeah.
that like makes me wary about this stuff is I have like this kind of unwritten rule where I don't like to play cards in my deck that also are very bad for my deck to play against because so many
True.
people
That
are
is a consideration
playing
you got to make at certain tables
clones.
and certain metas.
Yeah, so many people play clones and like Gonti effects that steal your stuff that
Yeah,
like
or cursed mirrors.
yeah, if they copy this, they're just gonna get rid of your angel and then also like just eat your stuff. So it's a little dangerous in the right kind of metas, but out of the box, this is
Yeah,
probably pretty good. And
you've gotta consider those sorts of things. I still like in the type of deck you're playing this. You're playing a way to cheat out of the graveyard. You're not paying 7 mana for this
yeah, exactly. That's
on
the
a normal
point. You know,
day.
the plane cycle,
Um,
just like we said with the ruin wheel guy. Like your plan is to
yeah,
plane cycle and then reanimate it somehow.
and in this deck, I mean, your commander is a sack outlet for your artifacts. So even if someone clones this, you won't be too remiss if they target your things, or if they clone it and target your things, which they're likely to do, because you can sacrifice them and not have them be permanently exiled.
Right.
So there's that consideration as well for a card like
That's
this.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to make sure you don't get hosed by it. But I think I don't know. I think white artifact creature reanimating artifact kind of decks. I think this card might see play in decks like those. Like
Yeah,
if
it's
someone
probably fine.
people buying this Lorehold deck and are tweaking it, they probably will leave this card in.
Agreed. Speaking of ways to get things back, the next card is Wake the Past. It's 5 red white for a sorcery, 7 mana sorcery. Return all artifact cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. So, if you're playing out of the box and your opponent's playing Alharu or whatever, and they let it go to the graveyard, they probably have Wake the Past in their hand. I assume.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in general, so the problem with this card that I see is that it is a Boros card. So you can't just like put it in your existing artifact deck because your existing artifact deck is likely not red white. But
Yeah.
if you are specifically red white plus and you are an artifact deck,
If
this
you're like
card's going
Rhea
to
or
be
something.
yeah, this card's going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this card could potentially be extremely good. Potentially win the game. The
Yeah,
haste again, haste like with the secondary commander, the haste is very relevant for making these like single turn huge plays. Um
huge plays. Hashtag huge plays.
Huge plays. I like this card.
Mm.
I mean, people play this sort of effect all the time. We know Rise of the Dark Realms.
Hmm.
Trying to think of ones that are less.
Yeah, I mean, there's
That one's very explosive, but like
um,
taking the whole graveyard and putting it on the battlefield. Those
Open
kinds
the
of effects.
vaults. Open the vaults is the one. I keep mentioning cards and then it's in the thesaurus right below.
Yeah, I was saying we should click these cards and see if it's a source card, and then we won't have to like stumble trying to remember
Yeah,
what they are because it'll tell us like, oh, you mean this card.
scrap
Uh,
mastery also very
yeah,
similar.
Scrap Mastery is very very much like Scrap Mastery. Unlike Scrap Mastery and Open Vaults, though, it is not symmetrical. It is only your graveyard, and your
Hmm.
graveyard alone.
And
So
it does
you don't
give
have
all
to
your
worry
stuff.
about that.
It gives all your artifacts haste too. Well, it gives all the artifacts that entered this way haste, but you know that means all your artifact creatures are bashing that turn. So
Oh
th-
yeah, like
this seems like a good finisher for the type of deck that this is signaling. So
yeah.
I like the
If
card.
Boris artifact creatures is a thing that like it's definitely to support that archetype. Definitely, yeah, I would definitely say like if you're playing Alibu or whoever,
Yeah.
it's definitely a card you could be finishing out games with. Yeah, another card. I mean, I played the morph precon from a couple years ago, and the best card in the deck is very likely
Gaslight conscription.
Ghastly Conscription.
Yeah.
Yes, very often just ends the game because it's just
Yeah. You
an
just
overwhelming
outvalue
amount of
somebody.
value and a lethal threat very often on board. So
Yeah.
yeah, very comparable. Same amount of mana. It's very comparable to that in the right deck, where with a lot of artifact creatures or powerful artifacts.
All right, well, let's skip Study Hall for a second and go to Triplicate Titan, and then we'll come back to
Okay.
Study Hall. Triplicate Titan's a card that nobody's ever going to put in a commander deck unless they're cheating it into play somehow. It's
Oh well, yeah. Okay, you said that already. Okay, okay.
9 mana for a 9/9 with Flying, Vigilance, Trample, and then when it dies, you get 3 different 3/3s, each of which has one of those abilities. So a 3/3 Flyer, 3/3 Vigilance, 3/3 Trample. You're not casting this for 9 unless you're in a deck that really cheats on mana cost somehow.
Yeah.
And if you are in a deck that cares about reanimating, I guess just creatures in general, it doesn't even necessarily have to be artifact creatures, this card
Yeah.
actually becomes pretty
This
decent.
card, I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm gonna click the card. It's gonna show me Wormcoil Engine. It's gonna show me. Hold on.
Yeah, Wormcoil. I was going to
Okay,
mention Phyrexian
Phyrexian
Triniform.
Triniform and Wormcoil Engine. Those are the two I was thinking of. Yeah, it's very much in that vein of like strong, very strong value creature. That even if they kill it, they're still in the fire, so to speak, out of the frying pan into the fire. But
You know what? This because this is just generic mana to cast it. This might actually be good in like a Rakdos deck, like original Rakdos, or
yeah, I was thinking that as well. Or Rakdos Lord of Riots,
what's
not original
the
Rakdos.
what's the elephant, the +1/+1 counter elephant from Commander Legends? It's like Hamza or something. Your creatures are cheaper for everything that has a
Oh yeah,
+1
yeah,
counter on it.
yeah. That one. I mean, Yannette. It's I was going to mention on the mathematic aspect of this card with the threes, the three keywords, the nines. Like I don't know, it's making the 3/3/3 is very pleasing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
cool card. Like there are some things that care about golems too. I don't know
I
that.
was gonna mention for I mean we kept moving on from the other golems. I was gonna say, by the way, golem support, it's finally
Yeah.
here for your golem decks.
None of this stuff
They're
specifically says golem tribal on it, but there are random things that care about golems out
I mean,
there.
Wizards is kind of popping off on the golems. Like we got Iktekik or whatever from Commander
The
Legends, and
green partner.
there are several golems in this set. The I do like the Phyrexian Triniform. It's a very similar card to this one, where it's
Hmm.
just I mean a very good artifact creature, a very threatening artifact creature that
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can abuse.
also, like it also attacks for 9 in the air and still blocks. So if you do sneak it into play, like it's
Yeah,
gonna have an effect on the board.
this is a good creature. Like if you're playing like if you're trying to just play a big threatened creature and beat face, this is fine, especially if you're cheating it out, which is
It's
what you're doing with this deck.
it's good with
You're
Ashnod's
trying to
Altar. That's all I can say.
well, good with Ashnod. Yeah,
We broke. There we go. We broke Micah Synthitis and we broke Ashnod's Altar.
get a whole 8 colorless mana. You're almost completely refunded for your paying the 9 mana with Ashnod's Altar in this card. Excellent, excellent.
So we'll go over study hall, and then I think what we should do is we'll probably just keep recording, but we should do pauses in between and just do these as like separate videos.
I was gonna mention because we
Yeah.
it's taking a little while.
This always happens when you get two people talking about Magic. They just go on forever about like a
You're
vanilla
absolutely right.
3/3. Study Hall is a colorless land that I have to presume is in every single deck. It taps for colorless. You can pay 1 mana and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. And then when you spend that mana to cast your commander, you scry X, where X is the number of times it's been cast from the command zone. So, kind of really not good card filter, and it's kind of like Opal Palace, but the upside you get is scrying instead of +1/+1 counters. And there's some decks that care about this. I think, all of your commander decks at this point should have like a Path of Ancestry, Command Tower,
Yeah.
Exotic Orchard. Like, I think by now regular commander players should be set on like generic ways to produce their commander's colors. And I think it's to the point where like I don't play Opal Palace in any of my decks anymore, and because the mana fix, there's just so much mana fixing now,
There
and
is. I mean,
cheap
things like
mana
Opal
fixing.
Palette, like you're not playing Opal Palette for the mana fixing by any means anymore. Like you're playing it because your commander Skullbriar
Right.
or something that cares about these counters that you're dumping on it.
And I presume this is going to be the same. That maybe if
Yeah,
you are
if
just
scrying is really important, if you're playing that new partner where you draw instead of scry,
yeah
actually that
exactly.
doesn't work because it's on the stack and it's not on the
You're right. You're right.
Never mind.
Um,
But something where scrying is really important for your deck.
yeah, maybe your Yannette deck. Like I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, like Yannette or something where the top deck really really matters.
Yeah.
You can play it with that partner. You just cast the other partner with it, and then you scry while he.
I think new players flock to this sort of card, but just to kind of spell it out, if some rando person's here and wondering why we don't like this card as much, is because when you pay 1 mana to activate this ability, you're actually overpaying for whatever you're casting.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you need an additional mana to cast your commander, and this is only when you cast your commander, right? This isn't like Path of Ancestry.
This is only your commander. Yeah.
Yeah. So if your commander is already on board, like this just kind of doesn't do anything. But
also, if you're for each time you cast a commander, if you're repeatedly casting a cheap commander, or you have partners where you're casting casting a commander card from the command zone more often than other decks are, like if you can use this repeatedly, I think its value goes up a little bit as far as the card in your deck. I think I'm fine with this card. I'm fine with cards like this because I mean, we've been playing for so long. Like we own some pretty decent lands. Like if you're someone who's played Magic for a long time, or plays a lot of other format, like you might have access to a lot of better lands. But
right.
if you're like someone who's new to the game, or just buying a product for the first time,
if this is your first commander deck, you can make use of this. Like, it's fine.
Absolutely. This is a perfectly, like, if you have this in your deck, and if you've got a budget mana base and you're playing this, like I am not gonna bat an eye at all. I think it's perfectly fair and as color fixing or whatever for a more budget mana base.
All right.